Smoking is definitely going out of style, and I think smokers should be considerate towards non-smokers.
It's not only aerosols that contain this chemical CFCs, it's also in quite a number of other things.
Step back into the 1980s, a decade when ordinary habits looked nothing like today. From smoke-filled diners to toxic fuels and vanishing freedoms, these everyday rituals once felt normal, but now seem almost unbelievable. Smoking in restaurants and bars. Push open the door. The room glows amber. A server sets down coffee and an ashtray in the same motion. In the 80s, lighting up indoors wasn't allowed. It was expected. First dates, business lunches, post-shift beers. Smoke braided through them all.
Did you say I'll feel better smoking, Philip Morris?
Yes, you will feel better.
It signaled adulthood, cool, belonging. But that blue haze carried a bill no one tallied. Secondhand exposure, coughs that wouldn't quit, kids in booths under the fog. As studies mounted and lawsuits landed, smoking sections shrank to doorways, then to memory. Overnight, the clink of glass ashtrays was replaced by no smoking decals and fresher air. The vibe was real, but so were the costs. Next, the fuel that made cars feel stronger, while quietly poisoning the streets we drove on. Leaded gasoline. Pull into the station and choose your pump, leaded or unleaded. In the 1980s, many engines still drank leaded gas. The exhaust note deeper, the idle smooth.
Lead gasoline, before they made unleaded gasoline, lowered everyone's IQ in cities.
We loved the power. We ignored the plume. Lead didn't just vanish. It settled in lungs, soil, and city dust, shaping public health in ways dashboards never showed. As scientists rang alarms and catalytic converters spread, regulators tightened the noose. By the mid-1990s, leaded fuel was out, and highways breathed easier. What once felt like progress became a case study in unintended consequences. A better burn with a toxic hangover. The smell of old exhaust still sparks nostalgia, but also a wince. Coming up, a miracle building material that turns ceilings into a slow, invisible threat. Asbestos in buildings. Ceiling tiles that never warped. Insulation that wouldn't burn. Floors tough as gym mats. The 1980s built on asbestos because it worked. Durable, fire-resistant, affordable.
To show us where we might find asbestos-containing material.
You couldn't see it, which was the problem. When fibers broke free, they lodged deep, trading immediate safety for long-term harm. As headlines grew and lawsuits piled up, schools closed for abatement, office towers wrapped themselves in caution tape, and popcorn ceilings got a second look. The fix was messy. Hazmat suits, negative pressure tents, and budgets blown on remediation instead of renovation. Asbestos became the cautionary whisper inside the walls. What you can't see can still shape your life. Next, a late-night habit so casual it felt harmless, until the laws and the culture slammed the brakes. DUI without severe penalties. Bar lights up, keys out. I'm fine. In the 80s, that line ended too many nights. Blood alcohol limits were higher, checkpoints rare, and one for the road was a joke, not a red flag. Then came the toll. PSAS with Twisted Metal, grieving families on the evening news, and advocacy that refused to be ignored. States lowered limits, raised penalties, and treated drunk driving like the deadly choice it is. Behavior followed. Designated drivers, rides home, a social script rewritten. It's hard to imagine now how routine it was to mix engines and alcohol. The shift didn't just change laws, it changed norms. Up next, the everyday hiss of a spray can, and the global hole it helped punch in the sky. CFC-containing aerosol sprays. In the 1980s, aerosol cans were part of everyday life.
Ozone-friendly aerosols. I've actually found about 10 or even 20 different types of labels on products.
Hairsprays held towering perms in place. Air fresheners filled rooms with sharp scents, and cleaning products promised effortless shine. The hiss of a spray can felt modern, efficient, and perfectly harmless. Few realized that chlorofluorocarbons, the propellants inside, were silently damaging the ozone layer high above the Earth. When scientists revealed the link, it shocked the public and sparked one of the biggest environmental shifts of the decade. By the late 80s, regulations phased out CFCs, and shelves slowly filled with safer alternatives. Looking back, it's striking how something so ordinary carried such global consequences. And if the air itself needed saving from hidden chemicals, what other products from the 80s might have carried risks? We only understood years later. Selling cigarettes to minors under 18. In the 1980s, buying cigarettes didn't always come with strict age checks. Corner stores, vending machines, and gas stations often sold packs to teenagers with little more than pocket change. For many, it was part of growing up, slipping a quarter into a machine, pulling the handle, and walking away with a pack like it was candy. At the time, smoking carried a cool, rebellious edge, fueled by advertising and peer pressure.
The smokers from the non-smokers. This is a non-smoking section here, right up to here, over there.
But behind the casual sales were mounting health concerns and a rising push to protect young people from addiction. Over the years, laws tightened, machines vanished, and selling cigarettes to anyone under 18 became strictly forbidden nationwide. What once felt like a rite of passage is now unthinkable. And if cigarettes were once so easy for teens to buy, what other freedoms from the 80s might seem shocking today?
Driving without seatbelts.
In the 1980s, buckling up wasn't always part of the routine. Many cars lacked reminders, and several states didn't yet require seatbelts at all. Families drove through city streets and country roads, with children unrestrained in the back, adults leaning casually against doors, and the occasional glove compartment half open with maps spilling out. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, it was far riskier than most realized. Seatbelts were available, but habits hadn't caught up with safety. Over time, awareness campaigns, stricter laws, and vivid public service announcements transformed behavior, making buckling up second nature. For those who lived through it, the absence of seatbelt enforcement feels almost unimaginable today. And if something as basic as restraint was once optional, what other everyday practices from the 80s might leave us astonished when we look back? Child labor in some industries? In the 1980s, it wasn't uncommon to see teenagers working part-time in factories, farms, or small shops with minimal oversight.
He's 6 years old and he's been working here for a year already.
Age restrictions existed, but enforcement was often loose, and young workers carried out long hours in conditions that would raise eyebrows today. For families, it was just normal life. Earning pocket money or helping keep the household afloat felt practical and necessary. At first glance, it looked like opportunity. In reality, it highlighted the blurred lines between work, safety, and childhood. Over time, stricter labor laws and heightened awareness transformed the workforce, protecting young people from exploitation and dangerous environments. Looking back, it's startling how accepted child labor once was. And if everyday work for kids could be so different, what other ordinary practices from the 80s might surprise us when we reflect today?
Using DDT and other banned pesticides.
In the 1980s, spraying crops with DDT and other chemical pesticides was standard practice. Farmers relied on them to protect harvests from insects, while gardeners used them in backyards without a second thought. At first glance, it looked practical. In reality, these chemicals carried hidden consequences, contaminating soil, water, and wildlife, and gradually revealing dangers to human health. For families, it was just normal life, a perfectly ordinary part of growing food and maintaining homes. Over time, scientific studies and environmental activism led to strict bans, transforming agriculture and household gardening forever. The charm of quick, effortless pest control was obvious, but so were the problems. And if something so common could have such lasting impact on the planet, what other 80s habits might seem shocking when we see their hidden cost today?
Unregulated fireworks in certain areas.
In the 1980s, fireworks were everywhere during celebrations, in backyards, streets, and open fields. Rockets, sparklers, and even bigger, louder explosives were often legal, lighting up summer nights with dazzling displays. At first glance, it looked fun and festive. In reality, the risks were high. Burns, fires, and occasional accidents were part of the thrill. For families, it was just normal life, a way to celebrate holidays with spectacle and excitement. Over time, stricter laws, safety regulations, and public awareness campaigns limited their use, making many types illegal in states where they once seemed harmless. The charm and adrenaline were obvious, but so were the dangers. And if fireworks that once filled the skies could vanish or be restricted, what other seemingly innocent 80s pastimes might surprise us today? Indoor tanning for minors. In the 1980s, tanning salons were a popular stop for teenagers chasing the golden glow of summer all year round. Walk into a brightly lit salon, and you'd find rows of tanning beds buzzing quietly, welcoming anyone eager for a sun-kissed look. At first glance, it looked harmless. In reality, prolonged exposure to UV rays posed serious health risks that weren't widely recognized at the time. For families, it was just normal life, a beauty trend that seemed practical, fun, and fashionable. Over the years, stricter regulations and health warnings transformed the industry, making tanning for minors heavily restricted. The allure and convenience were obvious, but so were the hidden dangers. And if something as ordinary as tanning could become off-limits, what other everyday habits from the 80s might feel shocking today? Certain types of martial arts weapons in public. In the 1980s, carrying martial arts weapons like nunchucks or throwing stars was often legal, and many enthusiasts practiced their skills openly in parks, gyms, or schoolyards. At first glance, it looked practical, a way to train, perform, and express a hobby. In reality, these tools could be dangerous in untrained hands, posing risks to both users and bystanders. For families, it was just normal life, part of the martial arts craze fueled by movies and pop culture. Over time, stricter laws and safety concerns made public possession of such weapons illegal in many areas. The fascination and skill were obvious, but so were the risks. And if everyday training tools could suddenly become forbidden, what other seemingly ordinary freedoms from the 80s might leave us astonished today? Driving without car seats for toddlers. In the 1980s, toddlers often rode in cars without dedicated car seats. Children might sit on a parent's lap, a boosterless seat, or even unsecured in the back, and families navigated streets and highways without much thought. At first glance, it looked practical, a quick and easy way to get everyone in the car. In reality, it carried hidden risks that were only beginning to be understood. For families, it was just normal life, part of everyday routines and errands. Over time, stricter child safety laws and awareness campaigns transformed how children travel, making car seats standard across the nation. The convenience was obvious, but so were the dangers. And if such a simple routine could change completely, what other 80s habits might seem almost unbelievable in hindsight? Selling Alka-Pops or flavored alcohol. In the 1980s, sweet, colorful alcoholic drinks, often called Alka-Pops, were becoming popular among teens and young adults. Brightly packaged and easy to sip, they blurred the line between beverages and candy, making them appealing to anyone looking for a fun night out. At first glance, it looked harmless, just another trendy drink on the shelf. In reality, these drinks masked high alcohol content and made it easier for underage consumption. For families, it was just normal life, a casual part of social outings and parties. Over time, regulations tightened, age restrictions were enforced, and Alka-Pops became a strictly monitored product. The appeal was obvious, but so were the risks. And if a simple drink could quietly stir concern and change laws, what other everyday indulgences from the 80s might surprise us when we revisit them?
Open container drinking in vehicles.
In the 1980s, it wasn't unusual to see passengers sipping beer or wine in the back seat, or even drivers casually holding a drink while cruising down the highway. At first glance, it looked practical, a way to enjoy a social outing while on the move. In reality, it carried hidden dangers that were only beginning to be recognized, from impaired judgment to increased accident risk. For families, it was just normal life, a reflection of the more relaxed attitudes toward alcohol at the time. Over the years, stricter laws and awareness campaigns transformed vehicle safety, making open container drinking illegal in nearly every state. The convenience and social flair were obvious, but so were the risks. And if such a casual habit could vanish almost overnight, what other everyday freedoms from the 80s might feel astonishing in retrospect?
Using certain tranquilizers or steroids without prescriptions.
In the 1980s, some medications and performance-enhancing substances were easier to obtain than today. Tranquilizers, sedatives, or anabolic steroids could be bought with minimal oversight, often used casually for stress relief. recreation, or fitness goals. At first glance, it looked practical, a convenient way to cope or boost performance. In reality, the risks were significant, from health complications to dependency. Yet, enforcement and awareness were limited. For families and young adults, it was just normal life, part of daily routines or personal experimentation. Over time, stricter regulations, prescription controls, and public education transformed access, making these substances far less freely available. The perceived ease and effectiveness were obvious, but so were the dangers. And if something so casually used could be restricted almost completely, what other 80s habits might seem shocking through today's lens?
Certain arcade gambling machines.
In the 1980s, arcade halls were filled not just with pinball and video games, but also machines that blurred the line between play and gambling. Players could insert coins, spin wheels, and win prizes or tokens in ways that felt exciting yet casual. At first glance, it looked practical, just another form of entertainment for kids and teens. In reality, these machines skirted gambling rules, creating opportunities for risk and reward that today would be tightly regulated. For families, it was just normal life, a staple of weekends, after-school trips, and summer afternoons. Over time, stricter gambling laws and oversight pushed these machines out of most arcades. The thrill was obvious, but so were the risks. And if a simple game could vanish under legal changes, what other ordinary 80s amusements might feel almost unbelievable now? Airbag-less cars on the roads. In the 1980s, many cars rolled off the assembly line without airbags, and drivers simply relied on seatbelts when they bothered to buckle up. The steering wheel looked ordinary. Dashboards were sleek but unpadded, and safety seemed more a matter of caution than engineering. At first glance, it looked practical. Vehicles functioned perfectly well without the extra protection. In reality, countless accidents revealed just how much lives could be saved with airbags. For families, it was just normal life, part of driving routines across cities and highways. Over time, regulations and technological advances made airbags a mandatory feature, transforming vehicle safety standards forever. The convenience was obvious, but so were the dangers. And if something as fundamental as passive safety could be absent from cars, what other everyday 80s practices might feel shocking to modern eyes? Dumping industrial waste without permits. In the 1980s, factories and plants sometimes disposed of chemical and industrial waste with minimal oversight. Rivers, lakes, and vacant lots could quietly absorb runoff that today would trigger immediate fines and investigations. At first glance, it looked practical, a fast and inexpensive way to manage byproducts. In reality, it harmed ecosystems, contaminated water sources, and created long-term health risks for nearby communities. For businesses and workers, it was just normal life, part of industry and production that rarely raised alarm. Over time, stricter environmental laws, inspections, and penalties reshaped waste management, forcing accountability and sustainable practices. The convenience was obvious, but so were the consequences. And if something as routine as waste disposal could become so tightly controlled, what other ordinary 80s practices might surprise us when we examine them closely? Video game deathmatch. Competitions with no age limit. In the 1980s, arcades and early home consoles hosted competitive video game battles that sometimes featured violent gameplay, all without age restrictions. Teens and even younger children could jump into deathmatch-style competitions, facing off in intense, fast-paced action that today might require parental guidance or age verification. At first glance, it looked practical, just another form of entertainment and friendly rivalry. In reality, it exposed players to mature content without oversight, reflecting a time when regulation lagged behind technological innovation. For families, it was just normal life, part of weekends at the arcade or after-school gaming. Over time, rating systems and stricter enforcement changed access and accountability. The excitement was obvious, but so were the concerns. And if digital battles could once be unrestricted, what other 80s pastimes might seem astonishing under today's rules? Selling mercury thermometers. In the 1980s, mercury thermometers were a household staple. Kitchens, bathrooms, and school labs often featured the slender glass tubes filled with shimmering mercury, used daily to check fevers or measure temperatures. At first glance, it looked practical, a simple, reliable tool for families and professionals alike. In reality, mercury is highly toxic, and even small spills could pose serious health risks. For families, it was just normal life, a routine part of home care and science experiments. Over time, safer alternatives like digital and alcohol-based thermometers replaced them, and mercury devices became largely banned. The reliability was obvious, but so were the hazards. And if something as ordinary as a thermometer could quietly become forbidden, what other everyday items from the 80s might feel unbelievable when viewed through today's lens? Using certain tanning or skin products with banned chemicals. In the 1980s, beauty shelves were filled with creams, lotions, and tanning products boasting brighter, longer-lasting results, often containing ingredients now banned for health reasons. At first glance, it looked practical, a convenient way to achieve glowing skin or a sun-kissed tan. In reality, these chemicals carried risks from skin irritation to long-term health effects that few consumers fully understood. For families and beauty enthusiasts, it was just normal life, part of daily routines or seasonal preparations for vacations and parties. Over time, scientific research, regulations, and public awareness led to bans and reformulations, transforming the beauty industry. The allure was obvious, but so were the dangers. And if products we trusted for appearance could become illegal, what other everyday 80s habits might surprise us when we look back? Payphones in public with no privacy. Rules for minors. In the 1980s, payphones dotted streets, shopping malls, and schools, and kids could use them freely without restrictions. Conversations were public, often overheard by passers-by, and few considered the risks of privacy or safety. At first glance, it looked practical, a way for anyone, including minors, to stay connected while out and about. In reality, it exposed young people to potential exploitation and unwanted attention. For families, it was just normal life, part of daily routines, social calls, and school logistics. Over time, stricter privacy rules, parental awareness, and the rise of mobile phones transformed communication, making unsupervised public calls far less common. The convenience was obvious, but so were the hidden dangers. And if such a simple tool could change so dramatically, what other 80s practices might feel almost unrecognizable now? Selling soft drinks in glass bottles with lead caps. In the 1980s, popping open a cold soda often meant cracking a glass bottle sealed with a shiny metal cap, sometimes containing lead. At first glance, it looked practical, a familiar, refreshing way to enjoy a drink on a hot day. In reality, lead exposure posed serious health risks, especially for children, though few thought twice while enjoying their favorite fizzy treat. For families, it was just normal life, part of picnics, school lunches, and after-school snacks. Over time, scientific awareness and regulations phased out lid caps, replacing them with safer alternatives. The enjoyment was obvious, but so were the hidden hazards. And if something as simple as a soda bottle could carry a silent risk, what other ordinary 80s conveniences might surprise us when examined closely? Certain types of jellied candies with unregulated dyes. In the 1980s, candy aisles gleamed with brightly colored jellied treats, from gummy bears to jelly beans, often made with artificial dyes that today would be banned or restricted. At first glance, it looked practical, a fun, eye-catching way to entice kids and adults alike. In reality, many of these dyes carried health concerns that weren't widely known, from allergic reactions to potential long-term effects. For families, it was just normal life, a colorful part of birthdays, school lunches, and weekend treats. Over time, regulations and public awareness reshaped the confectionery world, leading to safer coloring alternatives. The appeal was obvious, but so were the risks. And if something as sweet and ordinary as candy could change so drastically, what other everyday indulgences from the 80s might seem almost unbelievable today? Thanks for taking this trip back to the 1980s. If you enjoyed it, subscribe for more fascinating blasts from the past.